Yes, indeed, of course, a pleasant good night to all and sundry, East, West, North, South, Central, our friends in Tobago, and wherever you are, streaming on the World Wide Web. Pleasant good day to you. Yes, this is, of course, the corridor transformation, of course, would focus on love. Yes, love, and of course, distributing, or should I say, updating you on love information. And tonight, of course, no exception, of course, as we move inexorably, of course, to the big meeting in Siparia, where, of course, the love candidate will be, and the Laventel candidate, and, of course, the Port South candidate will be attending. But more importantly, of course, we were able, of course, to collate and come up with a sort of a abstract memoranda of operations. That is to say, the minimal rules of engagement. And we have established, of course, our information and communication center right here, of course, on George Street, where all three constituencies, or put another way, all three candidates for the various constituencies for the Spain South, Laventel West, and Laventel East movement will be cooperating and coordinating. Sharing of course, resources as the case may be. As we go inexorably, I think today would be 16 more days before, of course, the 28th, and then therefore, of course, a number of financial and other logistical and, should I say, practical, operational mechanisms for a smooth. Of course, in such circumstance, you normally would not have a perfect election. It is a human situation, and therefore there will be, of course, nuances where we cannot. There are nuances where we may not have catered for, but we have to adapt and adjust, because the 28th will come, and we have an election campaign previous or before. But that being as it may, a pleasant good night to all and sundry once again, East, West, North, South, Central, our friends in Tobago, and wherever you are streaming on the World Wide Web. Welcome, of course, to the corridor transformation with the focus on love information. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
A message from Lennox Smith, political leader of Love. Meet the UNC Coalition of Interest Laventils and Port of Spain South candidates, and next ready to work and deliver parliamentary representatives for these constituencies, Port of Spain South, Laventil West, and Laventil East Morvan. The transformatory revolution begins firstly with all right-thinking resident eligible to vote, and casting their votes not based on tradition, not based on emotional or impractical issues. The fact that the PNM has taken us for granted and have disappointed in multiple and manifold ways. That experience over decades is exploitative, unholy, retrogressive, and has contributed to the poor state of affairs of the respective communities that comprise geographic and socio-economic Laventil, from Sealots and Eastport of Spain, to Laventil on the hill to Beetham, True Marcac, Morvant Malik, etc. The 28th of this month, April 2025, provides the ideal opportunity to shake off the mental shackles that have militated against our development, thus rendering and reinforcing the stigmatization of a crime-ridden, violent, and youth hopelessness community. We can no longer afford or carry the PNM betrayal. We owe it to future generations and to the existing one to do the right thing to save the area and contribute to saving Trinidad and Tobago from the PNM. Tobago did and will do it. What about us Laventillians and city dwellers? That power is in our index finger. Let us together take back our community from an ungrateful PNM on April 28th, a few days away. When UNC and coalition of interests win, everybody in TNT wins. The PNM is solely and singularly responsible for the morass, quagmire, misery, and socio-economic cesspool the Laventills have found itself in contemporary Tobago. The measure of this debacle is immeasurable. No other community in TT has international advisories against it except Laventil and Nelson Street. Yet the greatest steel band in the world, Desperados, was given a $14 million accommodation on Nelson Street, while the PM Rowley gaslights the band and the community that tourists will visit and expects no violent episodes while cutting the opening ribbon. What a shame, disgrace, disrespect, and reckless exercise in tomfoolery. Such conduct is downright contemptuous of residents, and blatantly and patently a callous abuse of office, position, and trust betrayal. With deteriorating infrastructure, unemployment, poverty, crime, violence, family dislocation, overcrowding, poor school performances, gang warfare, no wonder the Laventills will dump the PNM on April 28th, Election Day. Thank God, finally liberation has come. For when the UNC and the coalition of interests, including love, win, we all will win for a better Laventil East Morvant, Laventil East, Port of Spain South, and Trinidad and Tobago as a whole. A message from political leader of love, Laventil Outreach for Vertical Enrichment.
I think, of course, it's important to repeat that, because I want to send a message once again, because I cannot overemphasize, I cannot, of course, not even de-emphasize that there is an imperative, that there is an inevitability, that we must act in our best interest. I say we because I am from Laventil. And of course, my track record of service to the community is unparalleled. I have admired when I was growing up, of course, certain persons who would have made some input into the Laventil community, but it was always, of course, emasculated by what I consider to be sectoral, or should I say a specific, limited intervention. Never before in the history of this place, and I'm talking here geographic Laventil, which begins in East Port of Spain, right over the hills to, of course, Mova and Malik, as the context in which I'm speaking. Nobody has been able to impact that place without, of course, being given the hero worship or recognition. But then again, of course, we can say the same thing about Spree Simon and others. But that being as it may, let's go straight to the line before, of course, we continue to tell the Laventil people they have a golden opportunity to be part of history and to break the shackles of the PNM psychology that somehow we are obligated to them and they are not obligated to us. We accept that, and that they could encourage us to commit suicide. But go ahead, caller.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, caller. Go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead. I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Yes, this is Rio Claro number 1.
Yes, go ahead, Rio Claro.
You know, this Buffon will come back in and talk as Rashid. Why he don't go, he don't leave the PNM and gone already. Why he come back in Sawa and talking as Rashid? Oh, let's take on that man.
I'll have a little piece of it for you, because all he is doing is contributing, just as what he did in Tobago, to contribute to the eventual total demise, death, and of course, should I say, putting away of the PNM. Yeah, the destruction of the PNM. Yeah.
He say all kind of thing about Saddam. What he come back before? He leave the PNM, the Prime Minister.
Well, the PNM believe that somehow the propaganda has not been working, so therefore they bring the ultimate propagandist to try to project something that doesn't exist, and he has been venomous, he has been bitter, and of course that will contribute because the people know that the reality is contrary to what he is saying. And when he was Prime Minister, if he say jump, you know you have to stand up, and if he say close your eye, you know you have to open your eye big. So I think that what the PNM has done is, of course, put the final nail in the coffin of the political existence of the PNM. I think that is what they have done, and relegated to political history as a consequence. Hello? All right, okay, I see that that caller is extremely angry. He wants to know what Rowley is back there for. Well, he's back there to continue the lies. You see, there appears to be a competition between Rowley and, of course, Young for the greatest liar. The greatest liar, because it has nothing to do with the realities. That is the case. Rowley, of course, has said, imagine he gave us gall. He gave us, of course, bitterness. He gave us evil. And then telling us in San Juan that was the best thing for Trinidad and Tobago. Now just imagine that. He is saying that what transpired between 2015 and now is the best thing that could happen to Trinidad and Tobago, and the best that anybody could have done for Trinidad and Tobago. Nobody could have done better. I agree with him. Nobody could do better than that. That level of evil, that level of wickedness, that level of incompetence, that level of mismanagement, that level of corruption, and that level, of course, of profligacy, waste, and diabolical behavior, misogynic statements notwithstanding, as they, of course, delude themselves in a cesspool, of evil. Their toxicity knows no limit. So, from that perspective, I think what they have done is put the final nail in the coffin by bringing Rowley on the platform. You see, it happened before. It happened in Tobago, you know. When he went on the platform and said that what's the joke, is charged for rape. He himself, of course, being a rapist. But Wasajuk is charged for rape, and here it is. He ought not to be vying for office. Just as how he, Rowley, ought not to have been, not just in public office, he shouldn't be the head of the PNM. He shouldn't vie and should not have been considered as Prime Minister. But the PNM is so greedy for power, so greedy to get their hands, their sticky fingers. As Rowley would say, probably he picked that word from me, but I don't want to take credit. I suppose he's supposed to be some kind of doctor, a doctor of rocks, so I don't think his head is that hard, but let me just regurgitate. He said, of course, a bunch of kleptocrats, meaning that a bunch of thieves in public office. It's a kleptocracy that he has created. And I've often said that, of course, the PNM has morphed into a criminal enterprise, and you don't want a better definition and a more, what I consider to be pellucid, a more transparent characterization of the conduct and the operation of the PNM under Rowley. And of course, faced with this, what I consider to be delusionary or illusionary dilemma, Young wanted to lie more than Rowley. He is trying to tell us that he is Prime Minister. He is trying to make a case that he is Prime Minister in the way that we know it to be. In other words, he has created the matrix of illusion, telling us that somehow when he is delivering his hogwash and his diatribe, lies and of course and suffering from mythomania, compulsive lying that somehow an election was called and he is now prime minister and head of the PNM, because that's the impression you will get when you hear Young talk. But the reality, all of us know, is that he is a minion of Rowley. He's a product of Rowley. Rowley had to be a backside and a half to believe that the population will accept that kind of what I consider to be undermining of fundamental principles of democracy that he, Rowley, ascribed to and tell us that he is fervently adhering. And what he has done by that conduct, by of course imposing Stuart Young on the party, which he still leads because he retained in the leadership in order to get his way, and he dictated that Young must be the prime minister based on the constitutional arrangement that is well enshrined and established, but usually catering for after an election where the person with the majority of support in the parliament. And of course there's an additional scenario where if the person is the leader of the party that has the majority, he or she becomes the prime minister. Well, I would say 3/4 of that did not apply in this case. The most fundamental, of course, is that Stuart Young was not elected by the people of Trinidad and Tobago. He was not even elected by the party, the rank and file, those who are qualified to vote in the party, different from the people. He wasn't even subjected to that electoral, or should I say that process. He was subjected, of course, to the constitutional arrangement to which, of course, the president subsequently suggests or confirm that it is upon that section she operated. And that is the section that says those persons in the elected part of the parliament, meaning that the lower house, the House of Representatives, that the person who attracts the majority in that particular part of the parliamentary system that we have, because we have what is called a bicameral parliament, where you have a lower house and an upper house. Lower house being the most important because its elected representatives alone could be there. And it also determines the administration or the government of the day that will, of course, manage the affairs of the country. And so, along that process, Rowley, however, was able, of course, to strong arm, to cajole, to put people in a Hobson's choice position. They have no choice. To give him his pick, or to give the country and the party his Rowley's pick. Having retained, of course, the leadership of the party, and having, of course, concluded all of the processes for the preparation for a national elections, through, of course, their own system of vetting individuals to contest the 2025 general election that would have been due at the time. He then proceeded, of course, with his anti-democratic, belligerent, rambunctious, and brutal undermining of the fundamental principles which he has espoused, and we know now it was just superficial and superfluous. He never meant it. Because just as Prime Minister Trudeau in Canada, He had the moral and ethical responsibility, if not legal, if not enshrined in legal force or legal adherence, to resign as leader of the party whilst resigning as prime minister. But he didn't do that. He want to retain a certain measure of power, and therefore dangle this a sword of Damocles over the heads of the leadership of his party. But let's go straight to the line before we continue with this saga, most despicable exercise in, of course, anti-democratic and power-grabbing disposition. Let's go to the lines. A pleasant good night. Welcome.
A pleasant good night to you, Mr. Lennox.
Pleasant good night to you as well, my friend. Yes.
Lennox.
Hey.
I listening to Stuart Young recently, right? And it sounded like he throwing Rowley and the moving train. Yeah, what I say that.
Go ahead, and then we will discuss it. Go ahead.
He said recently that when the UNC was in office, Petrotin was making money, right?
Right.
And then he turned on and he said that this PNM government didn't close down Petrotin. But if you listen to the words that he's saying, he ain't saying the PNM government. He's saying this PNM, meaning his new chapter. So basically, he telling us that the old chapter, which was Rowley, is demo closed on Petrotin. But he forgetting that he was part of the old chapter. So he trying to pretend that he was not part of the old chapter that failed the people of Trinidad and Tobago to bring it into a better place. But coming and telling people that this PNM government, meaning that his young party, the anti-New Birth, PNM, wherever you want to call it, reform or rebirth, didn't close on Petrotin. Because I'm paying attention to the words that he using, and he didn't say the PNM government, and he said this PNM government. So what he trying to say is, he blaming all people closing on Petrotin, because he said Kamala and when there was the Petrotin was making money. So it's obviously them in close it down because it's making money. I like Lennox.
No, your logic is quite, just say, saturated with specificity, and anybody who, of course, are meticulous will draw that inescapable conclusion. So I agree with you from that perspective.
Right. Let me get your next one before I go now.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I seen the experts saying that, but I think the quoting it from Stuart Young, where he's saying that the UNC using African people to divide the country or wherever. Right? But my thing is this. Anytime Indian people supporting the PNM too?
And they are also black.
Yeah. So, how come you hear Kamala saying, well, the Indian people supporting the PNM, them the dividing the country? You see how these people use race every time coming to this election, and people starting to see them over there now. They realize every time for a general election, they're always holding on to this race card. We need to find this DECA card and destroy the entire DECA card, so there will be no more race card for them to hold. Destroy the whole DECA cards. Because they're telling themselves that race card where they're holding on to, that is the chump. That is the winning card for the poker game. Well, Lennox, not listening.
Thank you very much.
Enjoying the show.
Thank you very much. I want to tell you, go to the top of the class. Because what you have really done is summarize what the intention is. Now, I want to say that it could be part of a conspiracy, a plan to make, something like the good cop, bad cop scenario. Rowley don't mind doing that because he will avoid, if they are successful, which is impossible at this stage, blue lights and silver bracelet. His most devastating, his most abject fear, his most debilitating possible prospect is to have Kamala Persad-Bissessar and the UNC solidly in the driver's seat and in government in this country, because he knows he has done so much evil, so much wrong, so much undermining of the rule of law and the principles of a separation of power, and of course all of the major tenets of democracy and on a national scale, whilst he was abusing what is called the Westminster system, whether it be, of course, those varied, multiple, and numerous recusals exploiting with no compunction and no principle and no moral and ethical, what I consider to be standard or pillar, and do so recklessly and brutally, and of course boldfacedly and without a care as to what the population thinks and the principles that is associated with, of course, right and wrong. Rowley has created a scenario where right was wrong and wrong was right. Yes, indeed. It reminds me, of course, of the Shakespearean play, Macbeth. Yeah. There's a problem with people's concept and adhering to what is right. And in some instances, they call it situational ethics. It is right in a particular circumstance or depending on who you are. So anything Rowley does, he right. When all of us know he blasted wrong and have failed. But I want to get back, of course, to the scenario where the caller has made his contribution. And that is whether or not Short Young throwing Rowley under the bus. As I said, Rowley's prepared because it's a bad cops, good cop scenario. But more importantly, he referred to what I said earlier, and that is Short Young attempting to generate a narrative to suggest that somehow he and his party contested an election and he win the election at the head of that party, become prime minister, a change around, or should I say appointed or selected his cabinet, and all of we must somehow believe that is as a consequence of a national election, which of course is to be held on the 28th of this month. That is how complexly foolish these people are, and we really believe that we are fools. So he's going around all over the place, cutting ribbon and opening projects and so on, and then blaming the other part of his party and the other part of the better part of 9 years, and try to distance himself from the past. But they resurrect, of course, Rowley in San Juan on Friday, because they realize that Rowley is so obnoxious and so belligerent that nobody inside of that party could replace or have a similar disposition or equal disposition to Rowley, and believe that somehow they will be able to succeed because Rowley come on the platform. Well, we will examine some of that tonight. Because you see, Hines is out of the picture, one. Young is no match for Rowley, because the PNM now believes that you need someone who could orate with a level of belligerence, with all of the, what is considered to be the body language, and could lie in your face and lie with a certain amount of authority that if you're not careful, you believe them. Rowley must know that's why he dismissed himself, that is working again. So the question of the black people targeting PNM is no different to when Rowley invented that scenario on the last public meeting of the PNM in Sangre Grande in the 2020 general elections, when this basket of foodstuff, meats, rice, sugar, basics, and a hand of banana, Rowley put it out. Of course, the UNC was saying that they are kinder, that they are much more amenable, they are more sensitive to the needs of the lowest among us or the poorest among us. And their policies and programs are people designed, whether it be the meal grant, whether it be assistance for cerebral palsy parents, with of course the children that are afflicted with that disease. Yeah? Whether it be of course taking VAT or rendering non-VAT over 7,000 items. Yeah. They are that amenable, they are that altruistic, they are that sensitive to the needs of the people. But Rowley and they would not. He take out the banana, the hand of the banana, and then say that he ain't no monkey, and went with that, and have of course people in the southwestern peninsula, over 60,000 of them, believing that nonsense because he appealed to the tribe, and they went and of course commit political suicide. Well, today, different story. It has evolved, and it has metamorphosized into a hatred for PNM and Rowley Party, the most hated man in the country, and worse yet as Prime Minister. Let's go to Eliza. President, good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Yes, good night, Mr. Lennox.
Good night to you.
Now, I want to talk about this illegitimate Prime Minister we have here.
Yes, ma'am.
This is a dangerous thing.
Of course.
And I had called a time and talked to you about this illegitimate Prime Minister. I want to know how come he could call an election. He not elected no how. It's not to say he was the Prime Minister. You know, he's the Prime Minister. And I want you to follow me. Follow me.
Yeah.
Let's put him in Rowley's shoes that, you know, he ain't resigned like Rowley. And he is the Prime Minister. He could call election. But you come and you get anointed and you call an election. That is illegal too. And we going along with this. That whole thing is flawed. Talk to me.
You want to make a comment?
Talk to
but
me.
it is fraud in the abstract
I want you
sense.
to answer me.
Yeah. Well, it is fraud in the abstract sense. In other words, it is academic. But the fact of the matter is that when the president give a stamp of approval, that's it. He is Prime Minister. You see, it's just like the 1818 scenario, when, of course, the incumbent was Basio Pandey, and the person who naturally would have had to continue to be Prime Minister is Basio Pandey. But, of course, the president then came up with this spurious excuse of spiritual and moral value and give the thing to Manning. So the president
what she do there, that ain't no election thing there. She accept that. What she doing there is flawed. What she do there, I say it's flawed. That is not democracy in this hemisphere. They don't tolerate that. That is unaccepted. You hear what I say?
Yeah, I understand
understand
the principle from an abstract perspective, but of course in terms of what they have done.
You're telling me about the president, so when the listeners hear that the president gives that right away of him being prime minister
That's
of
it,
this
yeah,
country.
according to the law. That's it, according to the law.
That can't work in the democracy with the Inter-American Charter. They don't accept that. They accepting
Well, I
that,
hope the
and their
people
law is
listening, I hope
stronger
the
than
people of Trinidad and
ours.
Tobago listening, and they have a chance, of course, to
I want somebody to come
undo it
out
on
and
the 28th.
correct me.
Yeah.
I want somebody to correct me. If some kind of big lawyer, some political scientist, something listening, I want to know if I'm wrong, because when I check it out, they don't accept that. That is undemocratic. They could have how much law here. They're not accepting that. This is why Rubio had to tell him. And I understand it this way. Rubio tell him, I don't know if to congratulate you. You know when you have to congratulate somebody, right? He don't know if to congratulate him as the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago or wish him condolences. Because the man illegitimate, they're not going to do no business with he. He illegitimate. All now. And then you call this election where you don't have full power. I say forget the law here. These people are stronger than ours. They're dealing with democracy. And Rubio told him too. Rubio told him to get together with democratic countries in the region to handle the situation. He gave him a warning, you know. He gave him an order to handle the situation with this man we're living next door. So you should understand, Lennox, they're talking about when it comes to decisions in the OAS, they have to be different. You get where I'm coming from?
No, I understand clearly.
Yes, he told him that he must get together with democratic countries to handle this situation with next door. I listen to reports with them YouTubers, these reporters from St. Vincent, Grenada, and they're breaking it down for you, you know. They're coming at we, you know. You know much thing they retail for? It's not only the Cuban doctors, you know. And I don't hear these people talking these things when they're calling here. So, I want to just say something again. When Moses, what's his name? Dennis Moses was Foreign Affairs Minister. And they had to vote since then they're giving trouble, eh? And they said they don't bong. You can remember that?
Oh yeah, he said it in Parliament, in fact.
They say it he said it in Parliament. What it is they wasn't bound to do. I can't remember exactly. I don't want to say wrong thing. What was the question they on? Where they said they ain't bound to follow. I believe it's the voting.
Yes, they didn't have to. They had the option to abstain or something like that because they did abstain or never voted at all.
Right. So he was saying they ain't bound. But you have to. This is what they were showing. You have to come to a decision. So with all this thing what they're doing with the drag and gas, it's all of that because they don't care. They want this place to be a communist. They want to dictate as they want. They want to tell us they're not bringing observers and who they want to bring is not so. The charter ain't so. You have to be democratic all how. And when you're undemocratic, it's sanctions. It's sanctions for these government officials. Right?
Yes.
You following me?
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Yeah. I'm waiting for your conclusion.
So what I want to say is, when Moses said that Saddam Hussein attacked him, and he say, listen to what Moses say, it will be tantamount if we come out. because they wanted to know if they sign off. So when he said that, you know what he mean? Doing that, it will be crucial for our country. We wouldn't have the protection, he said. So you understand how that organization is to protect and is to protect the democracy.
Rubio told him again? I don't know what.
Rubio told him, I don't know if to congratulate you or wish you condolences. The man is legitimate. They don't want to admit he.
And this buffoon come back here believing that these people will remain silent, just as the ambassador here.
Latin American does make some joke like we Trini, you know. They're out there easy, you know.
Yeah, but
you have to remember he's a Latin Cuban island man.
Yeah, it's to show how naive George Young is. He come back here and say that they'll do nothing to harm Trinidad. That's a big statement. And the same way, when he, of course, went to meet the then ambassador here in Trinidad, and the matter of Delcy Rodriguez, everybody asked, well, what transpired? He said that it never came up. He thought that the Americans would remain quiet, even though they are in their country. Because remember, it was Raul who say, this man trying to tell me what to do in my country. Remember, Raul was that arrogant and belligerent. And then this buffoon, this nincompoop, Camille Robertson Regis, what the hell did Trump could do? Well, of course, only recently they just get a snipping as to what Trump can do. Take back the OFAC license.
Hear this next part now.
And mash up the dragon deal in the process. Go ahead.
Remember when the Venezuelans start coming in here and they're locking them up in this detention center and thing, they started to cut themselves, starve themselves because of the inhumane conditions in the place. And reports went out with Juan Guaido because they sent video. Because in them kind of place you could have your cell phone. So they send out video and the activists here and things send it to the opposition. And Guaido report the backside to the OAS in the Human Rights Committee there. You see how much I know? You see how much I know? This is why he don't like Juan Guaido, because that opposition over there is strong. So when he reported to the Human Rights Committee in the Organization of America, they take action. And he had to release them because of the inhumane conditions. And it had other nationals there from Guyana, blah, 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 the Africans from Africa too. And we, the people, say, well, if only letting them go, we had to let go everybody because the place not under good conditions. And then the OAS tell him, Kiana, you have to house them people, you know. You have to house them because it have thing where you sign here too that, and all other countries, that if it have problems in another country, we enter this organization, we will have to help and house when they're running from persecution, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And you could remember what he said? You remember what Rowley said? Rowley said he has done no refugee camp. You can remember that?
Of course, when he resisted in the beginning, and then, of course, he opened up the place to any and everybody, including, of course, those terrible gangs operating in Venezuela.
They tell him he have to take them for the little while. So I just wanted to see how these people just put down the laws and put down the orders. That is how powerful they are.
All right, thank you very much.
That is what I want the people to understand.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But people, of course, as he said that, of course, Rubio had when of course, you know, it's really hilarious when Sir John met with Rubio in Jamaica, He then, of course, asked, but I think he would have made a trip to the United States afterwards. I can't remember if it's there or not. It looked as though it's a United States trip. But look at this.
Secretary, how are you? Not too bad. Nice to meet you.
Should I say congratulations or condolences?
Well, you should tell me. You've been in much longer than I am.
Only 9 weeks. I did it in like 3 weeks.
That's right. Hello, Secretary,
How are you?
not too bad. Nice to meet
Should I
you.
say congratulations or condolences?
Well, you should tell me. You've been in much longer than I am.
Only 9 weeks. I did it in like 3 weeks.
That's right. Secretary,
Just let me get this one more time.
nice to meet
Should I
you.
say congratulations or condolences?
Well, you should tell me. You've been in much longer than I am.
Only 9 weeks. I did
The
it.
man does know. The man does know what's that insult. A pleasant good night. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, hello?
Go ahead, caller.
Hello, Mr. Lennox.
Yes, speaking.
Speaking?
Well, yes, meaning that you are on the corridor transformation.
Yes, Mr. Lennox, I call back again from your car number one. Here, hold on. You have the other TV that books talking about people jockey shots and all that. That is the election campaign carrying on.
Yeah, that's the kind of man he is. He is depraved. He is morally what I consider to be unacceptable. He is a predator of indescript, and then of course he's a rapscallion. So a rapist and a pedophile. So all of those description demonstrate that he's the scum of Trinidad and Tobago's earth.
Camille Robinson was just talking on the TV. They know what that. I don't want to say long because she talking about the men jockey shots, Nicolas and with my all kind of jockey shots. She bring on.
Yeah, that really is some kind of comic show because it said that of course who the gods wish to destroy, they first send them mad. Well, they have gone mad. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Of course, a very annoyed caller indeed. But there it was, of course, where, as the caller, as Miss Arima rightly said, here he was, of course, can't take an insult. He don't understand that the man was saying something to him. He comes back here and tell us of a negative nature to him. But he comes back here and tell us that, of course, they will do no harm. You know what is no harm? Take away these license on which we depend for our future according to Rowley, and he say our cook. If it is taken away, when it was taken away. Yet still, of course, George Young trying to tell us that the man told him when he met with him in that kind of what I consider to be salutation, that they will do no harm to Trinidad. Well, boy, I don't want to see harm. If that is no harm, I don't want to see harm at all. Boy, George Young, get the hell out of office now, man, and leave us alone. But go ahead, my friend.
From you.
Go ahead, caller.
Concerning the international observers.
Yes.
What is the latest with that?
On the 21st, the Commonwealth Secretariat is supposed to be here.
And the other observers with the action for the Carter Center.
The Carter Foundation, I think that there was a showing, I should say, or a display of the letter that was written and that of the response. This fella tried to be as transparent as possible or different to Rowley, and I could only say that is because they're trying to play good cop, bad cop, and trying to cover up Rowley, whilst Rowley continues, of course, in sour with his belligerent, ugly, despicable, and of course aggressive self, making certain that he believes somehow he could sell snow cone in hell. So he comes out, even though, of course, the Americans may want him, even though blue lights and silver bracelets are waiting for him, he will come out, of course, being aggressive, as being the best form of defense. But it will catch up with him. It will catch up with him sooner than you think. The 28th is just about 2 weeks away. Yeah, my friend.
Oh. Okay. All right, let them listen.
Yes. Yes, people, of course, I want you, of course, to get this message that I gave
Port of
to
Spain South, Laventil West, and Laventil East Morvan. A message from Lennox Smith, political leader of Love. Meet the UNC Coalition of Interest Laventils and Port of Spain South candidates. A message from Lennox Smith, A message from Lennox Smith. A message from Lennox Smith, political leader of Love. Meet the UNC coalition of interest Laventils and Port of Spain South candidates and next ready to work and deliver parliamentary representatives for these constituencies, Port of Spain South, Laventil West and Laventil East Morvan. The transformatory revolution begins firstly with all right-thinking resident eligible to vote, and casting their votes not based on tradition, not based on emotional or impractical issues. The fact that the PNM has taken us for granted and have disappointed in multiple and manifold ways. That experience over decades is exploitative, unholy, retrogressive and has contributed to the poor state of affairs of the respective communities that comprise geographic and socio-economic Laventil, from Sealots and East Port of Spain, to Laventil on the hill to Beetham, True Marcac, Morvant Malik etc. The 28th of this month, April 2025, provides the ideal opportunity to shake off the mental shackles that have militated against our development, thus rendering and reinforcing the stigmatization of a crime-ridden, violent, and youth hopelessness community. We can no longer afford or carry the PNM betrayal. We owe it to future generations and to the existing one to do the right thing to save the area and contribute to saving Trinidad and Tobago from the PNM. Tobago did, and will do it. What about us Laventilians and city dwellers? That power is in our index finger. Let us together take back our community from an ungrateful PNM on April 28th, a few days away. When UNC and coalition of interests win, everybody in TNT wins. The PNM is solely and singularly responsible for the morass, quagmire, misery and socio-economic cesspool the Laventils have found itself in contemporary Tobago. The measure of this debacle is immeasurable. No other community in TT has international advisories against it except Laventil and Nelson Street. Yet the greatest steel band in the world, Desperados, was given a $14 million accommodation on Nelson Street, while the PM Rowley gaslights the band and the community that tourists will visit, and expects no violent episodes while cutting the opening ribbon. What a shame, disgrace, disrespect and reckless exercise in tomfoolery. Such conduct is downright contemptuous of residents, and blatantly and patently a callous abuse of office, position and trust betrayal. With deteriorating infrastructure, unemployment, poverty, crime, violence, family dislocation, overcrowding, poor school performances, gang warfare, no wonder the Laventils will dump the PNM on April 28th, Election Day. Thank God, finally liberation has come. For when the UNC and the coalition of interests, including Love, win, we all will win for a better Laventil East Morvant, Laventil East, Port of Spain South and Trinidad and Tobago as a whole. A message from political leader of Love, Laventil Outreach for Vertical Enrichment. A message from Lennox Smith, political leader of Love. Meet the UNC coalition of interest Laventils and Port of Spain South candidates and next ready to work and deliver parliamentary representatives for these constituencies, Port of Spain South, Laventil West and Laventil East Morvan. The transformatory revolution begins firstly with all right-thinking resident eligible to vote, and casting their votes not based on tradition, not based on emotional or impractical issues. The fact that the PNM has taken us for granted and have disappointed in multiple and manifold ways. That experience over decades is exploitative, unholy, retrogressive, and has contributed to the poor state of affairs of the respective communities that comprise geographic and socio-economic Laventil, from Sealots and East Port of Spain, to Laventil on the hill to Beetham, True Marcac, Morvant Malik etc. The 28th of this month, April 2025, provides the ideal opportunity to shake off the mental shackles that have militated against our development, thus rendering and reinforcing the stigmatization of a crime-ridden, violent and youth hopelessness community. We can no longer afford or carry the PNM betrayal. We owe it to future generations and to the existing one to do the right thing to save the area and contribute to saving Trinidad and Tobago from the PNM. Tobago did, and will do it. What about us Laventilians and city dwellers? That power is in our index finger. Let us together take back our community from an ungrateful PNM on April 28th, a few days away. When UNC and coalition of interests win, everybody in TNT wins. The PNM is solely and singularly responsible for the morass, quagmire, misery and socio-economic cesspool the Laventils have found itself in contemporary Tobago. The measure of this debacle is immeasurable. No other community in TT has international advisories against it except Laventil and Nelson Street. Yet the greatest steel band in the world, Desperados, was given a $14 million accommodation on Nelson Street, while the PM Rowley gaslights the band and the community that tourists will visit and expects no violent episodes while cutting the opening ribbon. What a shame, disgrace, disrespect, and reckless exercise in tomfoolery. Such conduct is downright contemptuous of residents, and blatantly and patently a callous abuse of office, position, and trust betrayal. With deteriorating infrastructure, unemployment, poverty, crime, violence, family dislocation, overcrowding, poor school performances, gang warfare. No wonder the Laventilles will dump the PNM on April 28th, Election Day. Thank God, finally liberation has come. For when the UNC and the coalition of interests, including Love, win, we all will win for a better Laventille East Morvant, Laventille East, Port of Spain South, and Trinidad and Tobago as a whole. A message from political leader of Love, Laventille Outreach for Vertical Enrichment. A message from Lennox Smith, political leader of Love. Meet the UNC coalition of interest Laventilles and Port of Spain South candidates and next ready to work and deliver parliamentary representatives for these constituencies, Port of Spain South, Laventille West and Laventille East Morvant. The transformatory revolution begins firstly with all right-thinking residents eligible to vote, and casting their votes not based on tradition, not based on emotional or impractical issues. The fact that the PNM has taken us for granted and have disappointed in multiple and manifold ways. That experience over decades is exploitative, unholy, retrogressive, and has contributed to the poor state of affairs of the respective communities that comprise geographic and socio-economic Laventille, from Sealots and East Port of Spain, to Laventille on the hill to Beetham, True Marquette, Morvant Malik, etc.
Oh, yes. Sorry. I thought I'd take it off. All right, good. Thanks.
All right.
So it's off now. Thank you very much. Sorry that people, and of course, I can only, of course, always rely on what I consider the quality assurance callers or viewers to, of course, make sure that the standard is such that we can deliver without fetter. But I was making the point that here it is, that Desperados, $14 million was spent to construct a facility for them on Nelson Street, a place where travel advisories or governments are telling their residents, if you're coming to Trinidad as an investor or as a tourist, don't go on Nelson Street. You're on your own. You're at your own risk because it is violence. Don't go to Laventille. Violence. And we only put them there. I was making the point that Laventillians may not know. But they spent $14 million. In other words, why didn't they leave them on Chagrit Road, where it would have made sense that you could put or include Desperados with the same money that you spent on Nelson Street, because you wouldn't have spent more anyway, that's the budget. And it would have made sense and much more rational and much more plausible that tourists will come on Chagrit Road as opposed to Nelson Street. No, but it's about disrespect. It is about an attempt to drag us through the mud. And Rowley had the audacity and the temerity to tell the Desperados management that he don't want to come back there, or he don't want to hear that the gunshots and things fire around it. It's just a matter of time. They are sitting ducks. That's a powder keg. Worse yet, fellas, gang I'm talking about on the hill is warring with those in close proximity or around Nelson Street. All of we know that. All of us know that. But you put them there, so you are the criminal, Rowley. The PNM is the criminal for putting Desperados in harm's way. These very talented pan men, some of the best in the world. And you don't know, Laventille, that you have to equally and in equal measure dispose of the PNM? You don't know that? I doubt that. So therefore, I'm saying to you, on the 28th of this month, you have the awesome responsibility to finally relieve yourselves, to emancipate yourself from the slavery, evil, wickedness, and barbaric conduct and betrayal of the PNM. It's not that alone, you know. The fact that they know that many of our senior citizens, and you I'm talking to in particular, because I know that the young people have already made up their minds. Those who are first-time voters, etc. But the senior citizens who live in a nostalgic or anachronistic environment where their memories are all that they have and want to hold on to, and therefore, of course, bring it into the now, when, of course, the memories has no relationship with the now as far as the history and the association with the PNM is concerned. Cannot be. And therefore, when you hear the threat to your pension, if you have $25,000 in the bank, somebody put that into a measure that was supposed to be taken into Parliament, and I don't think it was withdrawn. No pension for you. And many of you would have experienced, or if you are on a public assistance and you're applying for the pension, mere fact that you're applying, they take you off. Not when you start to get the pension, you know. They take you off immediately as soon as you apply. So what will happen to your circumstance? Not a Kamala Prasad Bissesa, UNC and coalition of interests. Especially if a fellow like me have to be part of that. No. If you, because it is a larger sum, and there are others that may be in the line or in need, or you develop that as a policy that you cannot have both, well, you at least wait until the pension, the monthly pension triggers in before you take them off the assistance. So many of them come to me. And if your situation is not that right now, but you're getting, of course, by submitting your certificate of existence, you know, every year you have to say that you are still living, and by your signature or by your, of course, your thumb or your fingerprint. No, every year you have to do that so that social welfare administratively will know that you are still alive and benefiting from, of course, the services that are being provided. That is to say, that monthly check. If everything is all right with your neck of the wood, you cannot feel no empathy to those who have reached the qualification age and cannot get because of the imposition of that new measure. You cannot feel comfortable. And therefore, even if your circumstance are not that, but the fact that they could do that to someone who reached that age, some depend on it. Others, of course, because they don't need it, because they have put away a good, what I consider to be substantial nest egg for themselves, so they wouldn't go on the system. But those who rely on it, you who are already in the system, you must feel a sense of empathy. You must feel a sense of sympathy. You must feel a sense that, suppose I was now applying, that is what I would have been subjected to? No! And therefore the PNM, you must accept, has lost its way in terms of its humanity, in terms of the concept of the welfare state. Because very often you hear Rowley talking, and Weiss, of course, he has not said it, but since he was part and parcel, they always say that birds of feather flock together. And of course, Rowley would say that you lucky, or put another way, that they have not withdrawn public assistance, and they therefore probably disband the Ministry of Social Development. He said only lucky, and that has been so since time immemorial, since of course Eric William, when of course the so-called welfare state was introduced in the United Kingdom, and therefore the concept is merely that of course of persons who would have worked hard during the course of their formative years and contribute to the nation in which they find themselves, and in this case of course Trinidad and Tobago, that they give back, the state give back something to them because they would have contributed. And thus the welfare state concept. Rowley making it look as though it's an option for the government. He's making it look as though you're lucky you're getting it. And we heard him saying that right through COVID, and using that budget, that allocation to try to account for the $22 billion that was spent during COVID. Using that money that was already budgeted annually. He using that because they can't account for it. And now we are hearing that they cannot account on the expenditure side for $1 billion and on the revenue side for $2 billion. What you want with these fellas? They have conspired to close down Petrotin because they want to protect one man, Rowley, because he name called in the fake oil matter. They conspired, Rowley put in his personal lawyer to give AV Drilling a handsome reward in circumstances where the evidence show that the owners of AV Drilling was trying to rob us, you and I, taxpayers and citizens of this country, and making less resources available as a consequence for our children, whether it be food cards, whether it be books for school, whether it be the school feeding program, and we can go on and on, including of course the withdrawal of bursaries, not bursaries but scholarships, as well as meal grant and cerebral palsy parent assistance, all of that. And then they still come and impose property tax. They still come and withdraw after they said of course that they would not do it. They imposed property tax. They said they would not of course take away subsidy, in other words raise gas and fuel prices. They went and do it. And therefore the cost of living has skyrocketed and continued. It matters not whether or not you had COVID, because they are talking COVID talk as if of course they were so damn successful. No, they have failed. They fail, of course, to acknowledge that COVID existed in the first instance. You remember when the thing was telling us, don't wear masks, don't go and buy all the masks and so on, is not necessary. That social distancing was a thing of the past, or should I say, not necessary, because COVID can't reach Trinidad. While the loyal and of course dedicated and people-centered Kamala Persad-Bissessar leading the opposition, asking for of course a debate from after Carnival of that year. I think the year was 2020. Yes. Asking for a debate, not once, not twice, 3 times in different houses of parliament, whether in lower house or the upper house. But he is on a platform on Friday claiming some kind of specious and spectacular performance as far as COVID is concerned. Can't find the money. Can't account for the money. They have to account, you know. Kamala will make them account. I know that. Thousands of persons who would have qualified because, of course, the place was shut down and they therefore had no means of eating a meal or getting a meal. And they put out money for that purpose. But very few got it, but the money done. I'm talking about those persons who would be, of course, particularly in the entertainment or quasi-entertainment field, whether it be restaurants or whether it be, of course, doubles vendors, whether it be shack and bake, or persons with pubs or bars. And they say they're going to give them a certain amount of money to tidy them over, and a mere $1,000 to $3,000 we're talking about, for a 3-month period. That's what they say. And when we look, plenty forms, and one of the things that you have to fill out, making it hard for you, something similar to that of the reason that they gave for taking the cut notes, $100 bills off the market and replacing it with polymer. Same complex reason, because the intention is never to give you the benefit. It's always for them and their friends and their family and their finances. Because when we look at it, and let's say you are a doubles vendor or a shack and bake vendor or some person selling what is called curbside food or roadside food, as the case may be. They're telling you that, of course, in order for you to access that money, $3,000 to tidy you over, maximum, you have to do what? You have to get a sergeant of police or somebody above that rank to sign saying that they know you either selling or engaged in business. What the hell is this? All over the world, United States, they give you a check, and it's very easy, of course, to do that in Trinidad. All they had to do is to consult the EBC, because they consult them for other things. The EBC is always willing to support, of course, what I consider to be questionable operations, such as that when Rowley went to the parliament and increased, of course, the number of seats in Tobago by 3. And the EBC in quick time went and looked at the PNM dominated electoral districts in Tobago and split it into 3, hoping that, of course, to give the PNM unfair and a distinct advantage. Well, the people of Tobago say no, we'll have none of it. All the too damn immoral, all the too damn despicable, and all the too damn conman and conwoman oriented. And more so, all the too damn dishonest. Dishonest. Entire shebang. Dishonest. And so, like those scenarios, where, of course, they said, bring the cut note that you have in your mattress and we'll exchange it for polymer. The banking conspiracy with the government. You bring 100,000, they suddenly tell you, we don't have enough polymer notes to replace, to give you the 100,000. So here what? We will keep half of that in the bank and we'll give you the next half in polymer. That is what Rowley and they did. People who don't want a bank, people who have a phobia for bank, people whose business is about cash exchange, whether in the agricultural sector in particular, where of course you pay for your tomatoes and of course you get it from the various farmers because they want cash, they don't want to have the trauma or the inconvenience of going to a bank to collect money through checks and so on. So that's a cash transaction kind of arrangement. It has been so from time immemorial since Rowley probably was born. No matter, it would have been, of course, several decades. And frankly, beyond the time that he was supposed to be living. Because the evil that he has perpetrated on the people is unfathomable, and therefore, I consider him to be, or ought to have been, an afterbirth. Yes, a placenta, afterbirth, or stillbirth. Because the evil that he has perpetrated, having gotten the opportunity to serve Trinidad and Tobago, he decides to serve, of course, the one percenters and leave the rest of us in massive distress, pain, agony, and brutal policies and programs designed to distress us and to reduce us and to pauperize the country. And places like Laventille were totally abandoned. And now you have the audacity to come and play here in Sanwa and what? And asking for what? For who to vote for all you? Who? We had to be mad. We have to be suckers for punishment. And yes, in the case of the polymer, they then tell these people, well, listen, if you can't prove how you get the money, we're going to refer you to the Financial Intelligence Unit for investigation. Well, people say, since most of these monies would have been accumulated over many years, you throw a little $100 there and you forget it, and you throw another one probably every month, every year, or even every week, and it accumulates. How the hell you getting proof that that money was obtained legitimately? And so people decide to burn the money instead of going through that kind of trauma and ending up in jail, because with it, they always provide some kind of jail threat. Like what they did, of course, when they falsely told you that the Commissioner of Evaluations say that you have a $5,000 fine and imprisonment if you do not fill out those bogus forms that the court eventually said through the auspices under the people-centered under the concern of the opposition, took the matter to court. And the court said that those forms were bogus, and it was a concoction of Rowley and the then what I consider to be criminal former Minister of Finance. I'm talking about Impsbert. Yeah, it's always something sinister and attacking the poor. And they believe that they could do that with impunity. And there's nothing we could do because they are surrounded with the apparatus of state, including, of course, the police officers who are prepared to act immorally and, of course, in favor of that bewildered bunch of opportunistic political criminal mafia syndicate called, of course, the cabinet of the PNM. Yeah. That is what we have experienced. And so people say, no, not me. I'm not going to, of course, go through that. So they burn their money. And the result of that was that the government ended up being in a position where over $500 million, $500 million was not collected or exchanged. We don't know what they do with it, but we know for sure they took it because it was used. And then the extra money that the banks got, their 1% Friends Bank, they were able, of course, to take loans. Yes. They take loans because the bank are now awash with money because of the scheme that they generated to, of course, steal people's mattress money. Understand what is happening here, man. It's a mafia government. And Churchill has the moral authority to come and play he's some kind of prime minister. He's a lame duck. And he's an asinine specimen of inhumanity, a total moron. You telling me that he don't know that we know that his brother started with a little known financial entity or company and became a multi-billion-dollar enterprise because Rowley and he and others conspired. Instead of giving the business to Republic Bank or First Citizen Bank, they gave it to Stuart Young brother only because Stuart Young is in the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago, and they conspired inside of there to, of course, deprive us of the best deal that we could get, even if the government had to borrow. And don't talk about the recusals. Don't talk about the recusal and the evisceration or the dismembering or the disemboweling of the procurement legislation after, of course, they delayed and dilly-dally, and the opposition insisted, and they came with a watered-down version, totally protecting or making immune from any kind of procurement scrutiny the cabinet of the country, claiming, of course, government to government, and, of course, matters dealing with finance and matters dealing with, I don't know how it came in there, but matters dealing with, of course, medical equipment. I don't know how that come in there, that the procurement regulator that would have emerged from the legislation cannot, of course, reach. He has no tentacles. He has no reach. He has no supervising. He has no investigative powers as far as the cabinet is concerned on those matters. That is what Rowley and they do. And don't tell me you don't know what I'm talking about, because it was the same group of individuals who implemented through the same conman and criminal man who can't find, of course, $3 billion. I'm talking about Imsbert. Playing, of course, he is now what? Minister of Public Utilities. A conspiracy to try to deflect attention, as Rowley did with respect to the Vincent Nelson matter, and moving, of course, Al-Rari out of the position of Attorney General so that less focus will be there, and then exonerating them. No! We say no! After the 28th, there must be a plethora of investigations of all of these matters. We want to know where the money gone. We want to follow the money. And let me tell them, the UNC are smarter lawyers than you could ever have in the PNM, because in opposition, they were able, of course, to beat the highly paid, off our expense lawyers that they would have put together, assembled against the UNC's bright. All they have is that brain. And make, of course, the government and the PNM's lawyer look as though they are second, third, and fourth rated. Nothing. And then Ram Logan at the hem of them all. And of course, you have Ramdeen and others. Let us not waste time. We have a duty and responsibility on the 28th, Laventil. Laventil, we have a duty and responsibility on the 28th. I saw when, of course, Stuart Young is shouting and to the top of his voice. And I saw Rowley, of course, on Friday. Imagine he has a hoarse voice and get hoarse. So he was double horsed. I say, Rowley get hoarse on Friday, and don't tell me I know what I'm talking about before I show you it now, you know. Before I show you it now. He get hoarse. Fighting for the life, reminiscent, of course, of when Manning, knowing he lost it, trying, of course, to open up the brains of the population and somehow get inside it so that they could absorb his, of course, false narrative and his, of course, deceptive utterances and orations. No! We must not be so gullible and vulnerable. We are the boss. And as Kamala Prasad Bisasa said, when, of course, she was regurgitating the laughter and the contempt of Imsbert by saying he raised gas twice and he raised it, and he will raise it again. And, of course, I didn't riot yet. Well, she says riot with your index finger. And that is what we must do on the 28th. Just about 2 weeks away. Just about 2 weeks away, people. Just about 2 weeks away, Laventil. You young people, you have a duty, of course, to protect your country, to protect your future. You must inherit a community or a country that recognizes that equitable distribution of the country's resources is an imperative, and it measures that gravitates towards meritocracy, and in such circumstance, all will benefit, because when the UNC, Kamala Prasad Bisesa, the coalition of interests win, everybody wins. All of us. And she has made it very clear, no damn property tax already. No consideration for electricity increase. As is the case with these fellas, they are only waiting for you, like they did with respect to Roger, and then of course impose their venom on you. You have the power in your index finger. Don't let anybody fool you. And that is why they are in your community today, walking up a hill, walking downhill, and begging. And I don't care about Marcel. I don't care about the fella in Lavatil East Mova. I don't care about the one, of course, this fella called Scotland in Port of Spain South. The fact that they have hitched their wagon to, of course, that which is detrimental to all of us is a measure of their own, what I consider to be ineptitude, reckless behavior, and want, of course, to get unmerited and artificial access to fame, fortune, the treasury of the country, and, of course, to rub shoulders with the shakers and movers in the society. And I say that they do not deserve that because of their poor judgment, and that therefore all of them must be relegated to the political dustbin and must be has been. You know what I say? I said they must be relegated to the political dustbin and eventually must be has been. They once were. No longer. That is where we have to go. We cannot, of course, countenance at that level of travesty, at that level of what I consider to be avoidable wickedness and evil. Avoidable wickedness and evil. How dare any one of us see all that travesty and all that evil and all that barbaric conduct and all that travail and all of that evil, and then of course go and dip and put your hand, your index finger or your X against a PNM? Balize? Are we mad? Are we in a state of what I consider to be self-destruction? Are we so susceptible to the histrionics and the clearly maladministration, and indeed the semantics, old talk of Rowley and them? Are we that gullible? Are people that, I'm talking here to Lavatil, that gave the country the steel band, calypso, mass, and carnival? Are we that gullible? Where have we lost our creativity and our sense of reasoning and our sense of what is right? And absorb and accept on what I consider to be not just inexplicable grounds, a group of people who just mamagaize us from Balize House, and they're living ham, lamb, and jam, but pretending, of course, they could come down on the ground and talk and set a hogwash and go back, of course, and live and eat the best in the country. Before that, you don't know where they came from. Never, of course, lift up. Never lift up a helping hand to anyone in these communities. But here you have, of course, the candidates for the UNC and COP and Love. All of them have had a history and a connection to the community. Whether it be Seret, Sinet, in Port South, and his, of course, boxing escapades. And I know, because I worked with him, when I was vice chairman of the East Port of Spain Development Company, and he was the one who, of course, said that in order, of course, to try to exhaust some of the energies of the young people, rather than going to, of course, gangs and so on, let us put a network of boxing facilities, whether in the Beetham or whether, of course, in Bard Street and other places where, of course, the East Port of Spain Development Company have jurisdiction. And we set about it, and it was a beautiful success. But before that, he himself, as a boxer, would have been engaged in these activities. Yes, indeed. Stowe, the UNC candidate for Laventille West. There's no part of Laventille West would not be affected positively by his sporting and management thereof of tournaments across the constituency. And then you have, of course, in Laventille, East Morvan, Robert Mitchell, a fellow who has given his life to making right that community. And therefore, all of them, collectively, you will understand, have a sense of belonging, have a sense of empathy, have a sense of understanding, and have a sense of vision for the area, sustainably. And so he gave away, of course, a true LFL, Laventille for Laventillian, which I created, of course. But the fact is that he was giving away computers, he was giving away agricultural tools to, of course, people who saw the problem of food and try to, of course, get and encourage the young people to engage in food production. But don't talk about, of course, the organizations that we created in order to, of course, assist across the board, whether it's in the Beetham with respect to the interface program. I wrote, so I know, Stephen, Westfield and they, and then Sherman Wilson's, the same fella who, of course, who attaches his future and fortune to the PNM. That's it. I went in his mother house, Sherman Wilson, and we developed the program, tire program for Beetham, dealing with, of course, the drains, dealing, of course, with the underground sewer system, dealing, of course, with the sluice gates to prevent flooding, dealing, of course, with the gas lines at the time that were passing below the Beetham on its way, of course, to the turbine down on Rice Road. All of that we did, generating employment opportunities and making sure that, of course, there's a sustainable cadre of job opportunities, including, of course, those factories and the businesses that would have lined the area between the priority bus route and that of the Eastern Main Road. Rail walk. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Good night, Silver Fox here.
Yes, man.
I want to tell Laventille people, we Tobagonians were stupid to the PNM. We were stupid to the PNM, and we catch ourselves. You can't go down a road where somebody only taking from you and you can't get. We Tobagonians, we stand up. We don't want to hear nothing about no race. Laventille people, let me say something to all you. Listen to the folks. The Indians is what keeping Tobago afloat. The Indians is what going into our business places. The Indians is what going into our hotels. The Indians is what coming up on a weekend and so forth and spending money like money and no value. And we the Tobagonians don't want to hear nothing but race. That dead. But we don't want no Chinese. We don't want no Chinese Laventille to be with Prime Minister. Look the color of our skin. Look the color of our skin, Laventille. Let me say something to you. Martin Luther King once said, and don't believe in Martin Luther King, and he was a human rights man. If you bend over too much, people will ride your back. And don't bend over for nobody to ride your back. Stand up for your own. Stand up for your own black man. Stand up for your own Indian. Kamala Prasad Bisasa is the only person honorable to take us out of this danger we're in. We have no other choice. We have no other choice. Look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, PNM has lost the way because you're fighting over here. You're fighting a losing battle because you're in trouble in Tobago. Tobagonians don't want PNM no more. And you, Lavantil people and others, look at us. Take heed before he take you. What is joke to you? What is joke to them? The PNM is dead to Crapo. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much, my friend. I'm glad that that intervention came because, as I said earlier, Tobago, 21 years of these people. And I told you about, of course, the disposition of attempting to get an unfair outcome. I'm going to tell you as well, in Tobago, in terms of the election, because remember it was a 6-6 scenario. And Rowley went and unilaterally and vexed all now that Fadi and them there, so much so that they send police officers to look for an audio saying that these people commit an offense to conspire to use THA money, conspire, then use it, you know. It's in the category of an inchoate, meaning incomplete, or the beginning of an offense, an inchoate offense. But they want to find out, and they deployed Trinidad police there, obviously. Well, Erla got, of course, a serious spirit blow from Tobago. Erla got a serious spirit blow from Tobago because where is she today? You don't do evil things to people by the office that you hold, and you believe that somehow. I remember very distinctly back in 2007 when we were part of the. It's not the first time, you know. So don't feel this is a fly by night or a Johnny come lately or an aberration. That's the word I'm looking to get. An aberration, a temporary scenario, which we, of course, as Love, entering an arrangement with the UNC. No. That's why I could say categorically that people like the former commissioner of police using that position and using the position that he would have been given in the UNC when he had the opportunity to talk about plagiarizing, and so it can't be yours, brother. You were part and parcel, even if you gave it to them, even if it was your idea, because I gave the PNM certain ideas as well. What is called, of course, the MLI, the Making Life Mova Lavatil Initiative. When, of course, I was asked by Manning to associate or to deliver or to communicate with the then Minister of National Security. I'm talking about Martin Joseph, deceased, both of them being deceased at this time. And I was made to address the National Security Council before Hines, because under Manning, Hines was persona non grata. They do him all kind of things. They throw him out. Suddenly, this conman of a former Prime Minister called Rowley, and because they are friends, as is the case with Young, and as the case with so many of his appointments, a total lame duck people, a total intellectually depraved, totally, of course, incompetent, made him, of course, for too long, National Security Minister. And now he had to say that he ain't going back because, of course, they have come to the end of their days. This cycle has come to an end. Rowley know that, so he trying, of course, not to go out by his feet because He is very well alive behind the scene. What he's trying to avoid now is blue lights and silver bracelet. That's what he's trying to avoid. But the point I am making is that the people who are now representing COP in Port-au-Prince South, representing the UNC in Laventille West, representing Love in Laventille East movement, are persons with a track record of service. Where Rowley was before Manning matriculated him or take him in, where Young was, and within the PNM fold itself, how could you compare Young as a member compared to, let's say, Penelope Beckles of long standing and associated with the PNM? It is simply incongruent. It is simply asymmetrical. In other words, it is simply unfair that Rowley, a recent addendum, because I'm sure that Penelope Beckles would have been older than him in terms of her connection with and, of course, membership of the PNM. I'm certain because Rowley only came into the PNM, according to him, in 1974. And then he was invited, of course, into the Manning administration in 1991, after, of course, the NAR. Yeah. Well, Young just told us, I think he was in the 20s, or 2019 or 17, somewhere there, he joined the PNM formally. So, a total neophyte. Undeserving. But because you have a fella who has no sense of right and wrong, no sense of reasoning, no sense of conscience, he imposed, of course, that despicable, buffoon-looking, moron disposition. And, of course, what I consider to be a total and absolute non-starter as far as public speaking is concerned. Trying to be Rowley. While Rowley may have a talent, but his talent is being used for evil. He sits down and sleeps on it and comes up with the most, what I consider to be phantasmagorical stories that if you ain't careful, they believe the nonsense that he speaks. And that has, of course, been his demise and will be the PNM's demise as a whole. The PNM must be finished. The results must show that they are finished after the 28th of this month, next 2 weeks. We don't have much longer to bear the iniquities of this bunch of opportunistic political mafia-style parasites. So these candidates for COP in Port-au-Prince South, for UNC in Laventille West, and for Love in Laventille East movement have demonstrated their love, their commitment, their dedication by practical experiences and delivery to the people without the office of, or without public office, and therefore access, whether directly or indirectly, to the treasury of the country. Rowley and they have no track record, and they come and they have demonstrated or reinforced that fact by their incompetence, their impotence, and their inability to manage the affairs. And don't tell me you don't know that they met, of course, something like 11 billion US in reserves, and today it is about $4 billion. Don't tell me I don't know that. In only 9 years. Don't tell me I don't know that they raided not once the Heritage and Celebration Fund money that was about 5-point-something billion, and they have the audacity to use semantics and tell us it gone back there, you know. When we meet it at 5-something, it gone back. Not bothering to tell us, the con men that they are, not bothering to tell us that because it is a self-generating fund, through, of course, our investment team that would have, of experts that would be investing, of course, on international markets. The dividend and so on would then, of course, be gained and so add to what was already there. And so, of course, increases the size of the fund. That was the intention all the time, as conceived initially by Basdio Pandey, another, of course, UNC initiative. Let us not waste time. And therefore, no matter what they tell us, no matter what Imbert say, that the fund gone back, it will always, even though, of course, you cannot borrow from it. So when you spend it, it's spent. Whatever you spend is spent. You don't have no borrowing back obligation or no giving back obligation. But in reality, it will always be short, therefore, of the money that they took out. So if it was 5 billion and you take out $1 billion and it gone back, of course, so you now have 4 billion, but it gone back to 5 billion. It means therefore $1 billion is still missing. So it's because it's supposed to be what? 6 billion. Tell him about. That is the kind of insult to our intelligence that these fellas have orchestrated, have choreographed, has planned, and decided, of course, to deliver in a spectacular display of not just tomfoolery, but of conmanship, chicanery, and rank and unadulterated dishonesty. Dishonesty. So these young persons, or these gentlemen that have been selected to represent the Laventils and, of course, Port of Spain South. And as I was telling you, whether it be Project on the Beatum in terms of the interface, and let me tell you this, Stephen and them, they could eat their heart out now, but the time has come when we must give credit where credit is due, but more importantly, save them from themselves if they are not prepared to do. Because these fellas, you'll see them up and down the place on election morning, carrying who they believe is PNM to, of course, the voting pool or the voting station or the polling station to vote, you know. Knowing full well that they're doing themselves and the community an injustice. I want to tell those, take the ride. Just as how you're taking the extra CPEP work and the extra URP money. Take it. Take the ride. But go there and put your X against the rising sun. Symbol. Never the PNM. The rising sun. Or in the case of Port of Spain South, the concentric circle that represents, of course, the COP. Let's go to the lines. A pleasant good night. Welcome.
Silver Fox again.
Yes.
Now, I don't want the people of Trinidad and Tobago to be fooled by PNM. Now, when Mr. Young changed up the cabinet, changed up the men and them, right? I want to listen carefully. If, here we are saying again, if PNM was to win, who could stop them from putting back in both as Minister of Finance? Who could stop them from putting back this waterman back into water from where he is? You can't stop them. Don't be fooled by antics. That is gimmick and this kind of thing. They're taking us for fools. We are not fools. And I want to ask you something.
Go ahead, my friend.
I hear that if I buy US, I could be in trouble.
Yes.
So if I buy US dollars from other people, I could be locked up.
According to the arrangement here, nobody should have it except those designated registered and licensed, of course, agents or agencies.
So then we become slaves to PNM in our own country then.
Yeah, because them want all, having wasted so many billions.
Poor people.
Including, of course, given to Venezuela.
Poor people.
Waste
Poor
scarce
people are calling on
financial
you.
resources. Yeah.
Poor people are calling on you. Only listen to what is taking place with this government. If only don't vote them out this wrong, we gonna eat the devil. We gonna eat the bread the devil need. We will eat the bread the devil need. We gonna be making bread from dirt like Haiti. We have to shake PNM off with tail. This is, I hear Young saying, UNC closed on Petrotin. This Chinese man could lie. And when a Chinese line is different from when a black man line, you know, I never hear, oh God, that man could lie. Everything Young coming out of Young is a lie. The man want to win election so bad that he lying and he lying and he lying and he lying and he lying. Young, get out of people's face. Young, you're a Chinese. Young, you're not no black man. Young, go where you belong. Go back in Chinatown or someplace. Young, you'll never be a prime minister in Trinidad and Tobago. I tell you that, Silver Fox. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. And of course, to what extent, to what objective they want to be back in office? To do us more harm, you know. Rowley said only on Friday that is the best thing could have happened to us. Best thing could have happened to us is when they did us all that evil.
That is more hostile to certain sexual lifestyle.
That's what he said.
He used to work for Telco. Remember Telco? He retired in 2003 or somewhere about there. In those days, $1,000 was plenty money. So because he managed to live long, instead of praising God for his long life, he tried to lie on behalf of the UNC.
But of course, yeah, I see that.
It was the PNM.
Okay.
It was the PNM that lifted NIS pension, if that's what you're talking about, to $2,000 a month. That was a PNM action. But the UNC wanted to win an election as soon as they come in. You remember UNC had promised everybody. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they must take you all for a different kind of fool. Because there are many years in this country when the entire year's program did not meet 5,000. Because 5,000 is plenty money to spend to build public sector housing. We don't have in this country the capacity to find land and the engineering to go with it to deliver 5,000 housing units a month.
And there's where the difference is. You know, when he was Prime Minister, I think up to last year, he was asking the media to ask Kamala Prasad Bissessa, remember that? That they say they build 100 schools. He want them to ask, he want the media to ask Kamala them where the 100 schools. Well, Tim Gopi Singh went into the parliament and showed us where 106 schools are that were attempted and in various stages of development, so that they are so myopic in terms of their developmental strategy that they cannot contemplate that far. It's something like, of course, Heinz. Heinz claiming, of course, that he somehow was responsible for the Lavatil Technology and Continuing Education Center. No! It was Lennox Smith who, when he saw the burnt out Rumbun, it was called at the time, saw it as a perfect strategic and centrally located a piece of land on this burnt out structure to house what we call then our inner city training facility, similar to the MLIO program. It was supposed to be modeled like that, with of course a community advisory committee attached to it. It doesn't have that now because they can't think that far. And if they had the capacity to think that far, then the several murders that occurred that caused the closing down of that facility since PNM take it over and finish it would not have been. You see, I could talk blissfully and bold-facedly and boldly simply because when we were at Fernandez Compound and close to the Eastern Main Road, just as that facility, we never had a murder outside the facility because every student know how they have to conduct themselves, and they were so open to us that if they have a difficulty, we have people to make the intervention as we got that clean record. It's not that today that all the youths were not, put another way, all the youths were pristine and clean and of course innocent. No, we knew that. That's what we have, and we have to deal with it. That's why we were dealing with it. And let me tell you this. In order for you to enter the MLIO program, your child, whether it's the biological parents or the non-biological, whether it's surrogate or otherwise, you had to be either engaged or had the potential to engage in crime. So understand when I say that, of course, these young people who are engaged in gang warfare, etc., are part of the community and we must engage, but we are not going to engage it as how the PNM has engaged it. That is to say, get the police to kill them out because they cannot solve the problem and they don't know where the socio-economic and psycho-cultural, should I say, beginning line and ending line is. Or put another way, they can't figure out what to do. We did on our own when we opened up MLIO trade school in the Fernandez Compound, a big warehouse, dusty, humid, uncomfortable. We built our own chairs, built our own benches, built our own classrooms, separated by steel that was donated by, of course, the surrounding businesses. And we went to work on these young people, and of course, over 6,000 of them. 6,000 of them graduated, some of course are in the police service and the army, as well as of course in various industries, including doing their own businesses. What are you telling me about? What you telling me about? That is people who know how the hell we don't know that fella who is somebody, I don't even know his blasted name from the representative for the PNM in Laverton East Mova. Of course, Marcel, I know him, of course, because as a young fella, I know his mother well. As I said, right in her house, we devised. I wrote the program to, of course, for the sustainable development of Beatum. The best he could have done is be part and parcel of the village council. No problem. That may be the beginning. But he's a neophyte when coming to the rest of the constituency, because in the middle of the constituency, I want to tell you that the Ogaro land, that of course 8-acre piece of land that was taken away, or put another way, a part of which were taken away by the government, and therefore I wrote to Patrick Manning, asking Patrick Manning to look into the matter because these people have been shortchanged and robbed by the government, and he did in fact send, of course, to the Ministry of Housing, and as a consequence, Marlene McDonald and several other ministers came up to Whitehall, meet, of course, the family, and they began a process, of course, assisting and getting the money for them. Of course, up to today, they have not gotten the money, and I say under Kamala Prasad Bisesa because when Jolene John was in charge of AGC, and AGC was responsible, of course, for settling the matter. She offered $1 million then, but of course they said it was insufficient. We said that we want $16 million, not because the land is in Laventille, that you're going to undervalue it. But then, of course, she said that as the that as the general manager of AGC, she only had $1 million limit, and she was prepared to give us the maximum. So kudos, we accepted that. But the fact is that they have not yet been settled, and I am talking about just after the Second World War. These people, this property was taken away because many of the boulders, many of the aggregate, many of the stone that would have built, of course, the Beetham Highway and, of course, the Dry River, etc. I don't know if the Dry River was there before, but certainly what they did up at Wallerfield, many of the material went there, and they were displaced by the government because the blasting was so intense. And the government under Eric William gave them a house free of charge, but in exchange, of course, for final settlement of the land that they confiscated in Mova. It's still there, Cicada Street. And up to now, they didn't get compensated. But what happened there is that the government went, of course, and built about a half dozen duplexes for people to live, even though they didn't settle with the family, the Ogaro family. But the land remained, of course, the Ogaro lands. And they confiscated, I think, about four of the 8 acres. And the other 4 acres, because they believed that it was government land, people went and squatted it, and they are still there today. We have to work out an arrangement to get these people to have title to the lands. The families are willing, of course, to do so for a very long time. I was part and parcel, continues to be part and parcel, even though some of them have died. So in the middle of the constituency, there we were, up Wharton Street. On the other side, Las Alturas, of course, just behind Las Alturas, there are people who, of course, who have lost their homes by it sinking into, of course, the earth, because the earth was moving. And, of course, in spite of the fact that Rowley and they were told that the earth moves, and therefore do not denude the land, do not take away the forest, do not take away the vegetation. And as they took it away to build those monster buildings that sunk into the earth and were subjected to a National Commission of Inquiry into what was called the Las Alturas. Las Alturas, yes. Well, behind that, about a dozen families lost their homes as well because of the cutting down and denuding or taking away the vegetation. So the land was exposed to the elements, the rain, etc. And boy, oh boy, devastation to people who would have spent a lot of time, energy, and their monies and investing therein in order, of course, to have a place they call home. But the land have gone, and we have to revisit that. And on Gonzales' side, I want to tell you that, of course, that edifice called MLI, while, of course, under certain circumstances, but for purposes of this discussion, let me say that that was part and parcel of the Mova Laventille initiative, where, of course, you get a place where you have a central office. And it was, of course, to be executed under a concept called the empowerment zone. We have all that. It is in writing. I'm going to show all it. The empowerment zone concept, where, of course, we put satellites in every single community. Satellite meaning, of course, individuals who can make timely and real-time intervention, particularly the Baptist churches that are in every nook and cranny in these places, so that a fella who, of course, don't have something to eat, he can go and get it to eat. If he wants to go and look for a job, but he doesn't have clothes to wear because he is not appropriately attired, and then, of course, they will make the intervention. And then, of course, these satellites or these representatives of the central organization will now have, of course, the power to access, of course, the Ministry of Social Development, the Ministry of Sports, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Community Development, the Ministry of Health, Education, etc., in order, of course, to push these young people before they get into a life of crime and be part and parcel of the negative elements that are only waiting like vultures to, of course, absorb them into a life of crime and gang warfare and, of course, borderline issues, and we can go on and on. Yes, we have the solutions. Yes, we have the solutions. Rowley and they can't think that far. Rowley don't have any hair on the head, and, of course, Hines, he looks too thin to think that thick. Claiming, of course, the Laventille Technology and Continuing Education Center. Hold on your tail. That is plagiarizing, man. Plagiarizing. And on the question of plagiarizing, as I said before, don't have anything to study about NTA. That is a non-starter. And I heard him the other day, the former Commissioner of Police, Gary Griffith, talking about it was his idea with respect, of course, to some of the initiative, whether it be the community policing initiative, whether it be, of course, the central center for monitoring cameras, etc. I want to tell him that my idea was also the MLI, but I'm not complaining and using that as an opportunity to get some kind of political advantage over the UNC. No. In other words, your idea will have remained an idea if Kamala Prasad Bisesa and the UNC were not in government and being able to execute it. And so to claim that maybe it may have some, what I consider to be intellectual or mental soothing, and no, so you make it makes you feel good, but that's it. Unless you're saying that, of course, if the NTA comes into government, which is an impossibility, that you're going to implement that. But that's only one aspect of government, my friend. That's only one aspect. So I'm going to dismiss that. Or for the fact of the matter is that Kamala Prasad Bisesa and the UNC will already or would have already executed that, and that they will, of course, return to it, revisit it, and, of course, after the 28th of this month, they will, of course, do what you may have been part of in terms of the idea. Right? And mind you, you had an opportunity, of course, to execute it. And so, I think all is well that ends well in such circumstance, but you will never get the opportunity to be in government because of your crass and your arrogance and your, of course, total and absolute unrealistic, not just assessment, but demand. You cannot say that I have 12 seats, for example, and I must give you a safe seat. No, if you want to come in, do like me. I go on Laventille, because it's not a safe seat for the UNC. But when we get through, everything will be added on to Laventille. When we get through, Laventille will be a transformed and different place. When we get through, and Laventille do what they are supposed to do, and jettison, generate the catharsis, the purging that is required in order to liberate themselves. And we only have 2 weeks again, Laventille, before we generate that emancipative disposition. And people, of course, have said enough. Of course, it's already past 10. A pleasant good night. Once again, of course, those of you who prefer to listen at this point in time because of the information that is being, of course, projected, I want to thank you, of course, for taking the time not to interrupt, but also I see over 200 of you would have been online to, of course, witness this, of course, revelation that you may not have been subjected to or be aware of. But more importantly, the astonishment, the amazement must be reflected in your own position. On the 28th, vote for that kind of aggressive, transformatory, and sustainable advancement of human capacity development and physical, of course, imposition for the amelioration, so that we can consider ourselves first-class citizens in this country and live in peace, harmony, and without the travails and the uncertainties and the anxieties that Rowley and they have consistently conjured up for you to know that they are bad news. Their toxicity is unfathomable, and they must never again hold office in this country. Never again. They must be relegated to the dustbin of political history. Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, of course, for joining me. At this time, of course, and we have come to the end of tonight's program. Let me, of course, just end as we began with, of course, a statement.
A message from Lennox Smith, political leader of Love. Meet the UNC Coalition of Interest Laventils. A message from Lennox Smith. A message from Lennox Smith. A message from Lennox Smith, political leader of Love. Meet the UNC Coalition of Interest Laventils and Port of Spain South candidates and next ready to work and deliver parliamentary representatives for these constituencies, Port of Spain South, Laventil West and Laventil East Morvant. The transformatory revolution begins firstly with all right-thinking resident eligible to vote, and casting their votes not based on tradition, not based on emotional or impractical issues. The fact that the PNM has taken us for granted and have disappointed in multiple and manifold ways. That experience over decades is exploitative, unholy, retrogressive, and has contributed to the poor state of affairs of the respective communities that comprise geographic and socio-economic Laventil, from Sealots and East Port of Spain, to Laventil on the hill to Beetham, True Marcac, Morvant Malik, etc. The 28th of this month, April 2025, provides the ideal opportunity to shake off the mental shackles that have militated against our development, thus rendering and reinforcing the stigmatization of a crime-ridden, violent, and youth hopelessness community. We can no longer afford or carry the PNM betrayal. We owe it to future generations and to the existing one to do the right thing to save the area and contribute to saving Trinidad and Tobago from the PNM. Tobago did, and will do it. What about us Laventilians and city dwellers? That power is in our index finger. Let us together take back our community from an ungrateful PNM on April 28th, a few days away. When UNC and Coalition of Interests win, everybody in TNT wins. The PNM is solely and singularly responsible for the morass, quagmire, misery, and socio-economic cesspool the Laventils have found itself in contemporary Tobago. The measure of this debacle is immeasurable. No other community in TT has international advisories against it except Laventil and Nelson Street. Yet the greatest steel band in the world, Desperados, was given a $14 million accommodation on Nelson Street, while the PM Rowley gaslights the band and the community that tourists will visit, and expects no violent episodes while cutting the opening ribbon. What a shame, disgrace, disrespect, and reckless exercise in tomfoolery. Such conduct is downright contemptuous of residents, and blatantly and patently a callous abuse of office, position, and trust betrayal. With deteriorating infrastructure, unemployment, poverty, crime, violence, family dislocation, overcrowding, poor school performances, gang warfare, no wonder the Laventils will dump the PNM on April 28th, Election Day. Thank God, finally liberation has come. For when the UNC and the Coalition of Interests, including Love, win, we all will win for a better Laventil East Morvant, Laventil East, Port of Spain South and Trinidad and Tobago as a whole. A message from political leader of Love, Laventil.
Well, let's be, of course, as I said, we have come to the end. Don't forget, of course, we have our election day machinery. We need to, of course, to find financial support for it. We have to get, of course, over 45 polling agents to monitor each one of the polling stations. We have to get drivers We have to get, of course, what is called runners. We have to get, of course, street captains. All of that would be, apart from, of course, breakfast, snack, lunch, and of course, a little kakada. We plan, it is recommended that we give each agent about $400 each. So that's about, 45 persons at 500. And then, of course, I did, in fact, share the budget with you, I think last week. But, of course, as much as you can, call me after the program, call me before the program, call me anytime. The number is on the screen, 337-6940, and you can make a contribution. Maybe you want to commit to volunteer to be an agent. I have no problem with that either, because that means that money we would have saved or would have had to pay to someone else if you didn't volunteer. So all of that is on your plate for, or should I say, as options. So please communicate anytime, because we only have about 2 more weeks, and we need, of course, to put these in place for election day. To win, we must. We must. And we are responsible for the candidate in Laventille East movement, and therefore the resources that must or is required in order to make it happen, we must be creative enough so to do. So have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. I know it is Sunday night, and you expect, of course, your Sunday night closure, or put another way, your Sunday night anthem. You won't get it tonight, because it is about getting these people out, because we would have already prayed and continue to pray. And this, what is playing here, is our prayer. This is what we have to do on the 28th.
If they are the reason why the economy goes sprout, when you're voting, vote them out, vote them out. If it is the passing laws that them alone can flout, when you're voting, vote them out, vote them out. If it is the building eyesores, east, west, north and south, the same way you vote them in, vote them out. Register and vote them out. Totally vote them out. State your finger and vote them out. Rescue the country, vote them out. Vote them out with them.
Of course, it was remiss of me. Don't forget tomorrow morning, the ground report, Andy, Michael, and myself. Yes, we will be on tomorrow morning. Andy, Michael, and myself, of course, I'm back tomorrow night on the Corridor Transformation. Once again, have a wonderful rest of the night. Bye-bye.